last thing Dale Mercer said over his radio, the last thing anyone ever heard from him, was 4 words. "It's already inside here." Then static. Then nothing. Dale was 51 years old. A father of 3, 22 years as a park ranger in eastern Kentucky, the last 14 at Harlan National Forest. He had walked those trails in the dark more times than he could count. He didn't scare easily. He didn't care at all. Green. And yet, the Red State Horror presents the story, The Last Transmission. Let's begin. October in Harlan County is the kind of beautiful that makes you forget you should be afraid. The hills turn the color of a dying fire. The fog rolls in off the Cumberland River every morning like it owns the place. It's the kind of landscape that ends up in paintings and in missing persons reports. Dale had gotten a call that evening from dispatch. A family, mom, dad, and 2 teenage boys from Cincinnati, hadn't checked back in at the trailhead by sundown. They'd gone up the Cutter Ridge Trail around noon. Simple hike, well-marked path. Families did it every weekend. Dale told his wife he'd be back by midnight. He kissed her on the cheek. He grabbed his flashlight, his radio, and his thermos of coffee. He didn't even take his heavy jacket. That's how routine this felt to him. He signed out at 9:14 p.m. and drove up to the Cutter Ridge trailhead alone. That was the last time anyone saw him standing on solid ground. Here's what makes this story different from a regular missing persons case. The family Dale went looking for? They walked out of those woods on their own at 10:30 p.m. Confused, cold, a little shaken, but perfectly fine. The older boy had twisted his ankle, and they'd lost the trail for a couple of hours. That happened. It was embarrassing, not dangerous. They were sitting in the parking lot, eating gas station sandwiches, when Dale's radio went silent. The mom told investigators later that while they were lost, they had heard something in the trees. Not an animal, she said, and she repeated this 3 times because she wanted to make sure they wrote it down exactly. It sounded like someone counting. Just a voice in the dark, low and steady, counting backward from some number she couldn't identify. Her husband told her it was probably a hunter. She nodded when he said it, but she told investigators she never believed that. Her younger boy, 13 years old, said something different. He said the counting stopped the second they stopped walking. Like whatever it was could tell. When Dale didn't radio in by midnight, dispatch sent a second ranger up the trail. They found Dale's thermos about a quarter mile in, sitting upright on a flat rock. Not dropped, placed. The coffee was still warm. By 2 a.m., they had a full search team. By sunrise, they had dogs. The dogs tracked Dale's scent up the trail for about 3/4 of a mile, and then stopped. All 4 dogs stopped at the same spot and refused to go further. Search and rescue teams described the dogs as not scared exactly, but, and they all used this same word, unwilling. About 15 feet off the trail, half buried under wet leaves, they found one of Dale's boots. The right one. Laces still tied in a double knot, the way he always wore them. His wife confirmed that later when they showed her the photograph. Just the one boot. They never found the left. They never found Dale. The radio transmission has been analyzed 3 times, twice by the Kentucky State Police, and once by a private audio forensics team hired by Dale's family. The timeline is this. At 11:31 p.m., Dale called in for a routine check. Everything is normal. He said he was on the upper section of Cutter Ridge and hadn't found any sign of the family yet. He didn't know they'd already made it out. He sounded calm. A little tired, maybe. Normal. At 11:47 p.m., 16 minutes later, he keyed his radio again. And here is where it gets complicated. The recording quality degrades in those 16 minutes. The forensics team said that was consistent with interference, but they couldn't identify the source. The surrounding terrain doesn't explain it. There are no power lines on that section of the ridge. There is no reason for that kind of interference. And then his voice. Dale's voice. The state police transcribed it as, "It's already inside here." The private forensics team heard it differently. They said 2 voices were overlapping. Dale's voice saying those words, and underneath it, almost buried in the static, a second voice. Lower, slower, repeating the same 4 words back to him. "It's already inside here." Over and over until the signal died. People who grew up in Harlan County, the ones whose families have been in those mountains for 5 or 6 generations, they weren't surprised. Not in the way you'd want people to be surprised. There's an old name for that section of the forest. The people who lived there long before anyone else called it something that roughly translates to asterisk, the place that teaches you. The idea is that whatever lives in that part of the woods studies you while you walk through it. Figure out what you are. And then decides. An 80-year-old woman named Shirley, who who has lived in the same farmhouse at the edge of those woods her entire life, told a local newspaper reporter this: "We don't go up past the second ridge after dark. Never have. My daddy told me that, and his daddy told him. You'd think a man who spent 20 years in those woods would have figured out the same thing." She paused for a long time before she said the last part. Unless the woods wanted him not to know. Until it was time. Dale Mercer's case is listed as an open missing persons investigation by the Harlan County Sheriff's Department. His wife Carol still lives in the same house where he kissed her goodbye that October night. She told a reporter in 2022 that she still sleeps with the radio on. Not music. Just static. "I keep thinking one night it'll come back," she said. His voice, just to tell me something. I don't even need it to make sense. I just need to hear him. The Cutter Ridge Trail is still open to hikers. The Park Service never posted any additional warnings. Families still walk it on weekends. And on quiet nights when the fog rolls in off the Cumberland and the cell signal dies, and there's nothing between you and the dark but a flashlight and a radio. Some of them say they hear it, counting. Low and steady. Backward. If you've ever experienced something in a national forest or state park that you couldn't explain, leave it in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you want more true stories from America's darkest places, hit subscribe. New story every week. I'll see you next week in the dark.